Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Final checks. We're going live. A beautiful January 22nd here in Nashville, Tennessee, amidst the anticipation for what is going to be one of the craziest winter storms in North American history. At least that's the hype that's going around the building. That's what's been slid upon my desk, is we are in for what's going to be an absolutely insane winter storm. Unfortunately, I was anticipating being able to get to Dallas, Texas for the Shrine Bowl, but due to those complications and anticipated challenges around what's going to happen, not only in Tennessee, but Texas and everywhere else, it's just not going to be feasible, unfortunately. But I will say this: if you are watching this, stay warm, be prepared. You'd rather be in a good position than a bad one. And a good one is being preemptive and prepared, regardless on whatever someone is going to tell you, where it's like, we always say we get snow and it never really happens. You don't want to be in a position where you are in a terrible spot with no food, water, or electricity. Nonetheless, this is a college football show. This is not a weather show. We're not here to talk about what is the weather going to look like, but it's been the topic of the town. We have a beautiful show. Welcome to the Stadium Pulse. My name is Tegan Randolph. This is powered by Crutchman Media. If you've never seen this mustache, this Rivalry hat, this Dallas Stars hoodie, welcome to the show. This is just college football. It's just talking ball. That's all it is. Simple sugar. Nothing to overcomplicate it. There's no corporate jargon. You're not going to see me talk about FanDuel odds for 30 minutes. You're not going to see me talk about how does this impact LeBron James' legacy. You're not going to see me just talk about the SEC. This is purely college football, the way it should be, the way it should always be, and none of this Darian Mensah crap that we're seeing. Not directed directly at what Darian Mensah is as a person, but that entire situation makes me genuinely want to throw up in my mouth. To give you an idea, outside of what we have ticking at the bottom, this is what today's show is going to be on a lovely January 22nd, 2026. We're going to start at the top of the hour with the NFL draft. You know, we are going to be talking about the NFL draft a lot during this off season because I love talking about the NFL draft and it's my show and I do what I want. Nonetheless, I do think a lot of college football and the NFL tend to overlap, and you have a ton of NFL fans that maybe don't watch college football, and now they're looking at the PFF mock draft simulator and wanting to get a good idea of who is what, where do these players come from? Is this going to be a good pick, bad pick? Nonetheless, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft plenty. We'll also be talking about my way too early top 15 for 2026. I think it'd be fun to do one every single month all the way up to week 0 and kickoff. And then we'll be talking about Alabama, because as I've done a couple videos and really dove into the offseason from Alabama, it might be panic meter time. It might be, we may have to bring out the old panic meter, get it out of the woodshed, dust it off, and really get a good understanding of where Kalen DeBoer in this Alabama program truly sit at. But before we dive in, if this is the first time you're at the show, welcome. Like I said, we're just talking college football. There's a big red button called subscribe. You may have heard it once or twice. Every YouTuber tries to tell you about it. It would mean the world if you gave this show another chance, whether it's another show, another short form video, medium form. We got you covered across the board, and it's completely free. Nonetheless, we're 5 minutes into today's show. Let's go ahead and dive in. Here's a way too early look at the top 5 wide receivers for this upcoming NFL draft, a position group that I think is going to have plenty of discussion of the rankings of some of the top guys. You know, the overall 2026 NFL draft isn't one that is loaded or top, I would say better said, front loaded with blue chippers. That's not what this class is going to be. It's not going to have 6 first round quarterbacks. It may be lucky to have 2. It's not going to have a bunch of edge rushers at the very front that dominate the conversation, that are at the caliber of a Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa. This is really a class that I think if you really sink your teeth into, you'll see a ton of value in players, but it really gets dependent on what is the preference of archetypes in each position group. And I'll explain that a little bit more, especially with these wide receivers, as a lot of these shorter, stockier builds are kind of at the front of my list compared to maybe some of the 6'4" larger body wide receivers. Nonetheless, you could see someone go pick 2 on some mock drafts, and they'll have that exact same player, say at like pick 12, pick 13. That's the type of volatility outside of Fernando Mendoza that you are going to see from this NFL draft. And those are the types of classes that I love talking about, because you really get to plant your stake into the ground and make your very opinionated takes about certain prospects. And there's no better stop than wide receiver, especially with how disappointing the quarterback class is that the nicest way that I can put it? Where truly it's going to be Fernando Mendoza number 1 overall, and then after that you're kind of looking for value, and we'll talk about that once we get to that point. But nonetheless, wide receiver is one that I think I've watched a ton of tape on these guys, and this is where it currently stands. I'll give you final rankings as we get closer, but I've watched wide receivers. We're going to talk about wide receivers. The number 1 wide receiver I have in this upcoming NFL draft is going to be Mekhi Lemon out of USC. This past season, he was the Biletnikoff winner over the likes of a Jeremiah Smith. I would have voted Mekhi Lemon to win the award, and I made a whole video about it. This dude is effing ridiculous. He went for 79 catches, almost 1,200 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And what makes Mekhi so damn good is not only is he someone that basically is a jack of all trades. If you want him to play on the slot, I think he's going to project to play at the slot at a very high level, but I also project him to be a high volume player, very similar to what we've been seeing across the NFL with the Amon-Ra St. Browns of the world, the Jackson Smith and Jigbas. A lot of these top wide receivers are playing at a higher level when they go to the inside. And there's a multitude of different reasons I can dive into that, but I think Mekhi Lemon is someone that you can plug into any given offense and you're going to get an immaculate amount of production from him. And that's for a couple different reasons. He checks the box as a route runner. I think you can make an argument that he is by far the best route runner in this entire class, regardless of his frame. And I'm going to say his frame many times because I think he projects to be what, 5'10", sub 225 around, and maybe 230. I'm going off the top of my head. But the nuances that he has as a route runner, it's just fluid. It's twitchy. He is a former 5-star athlete. He checks the boxes in terms of getting separation, and especially at his size, you'd get very worried that, say, a corner, maybe a safety can really get into his chest and be physical with him. But his play strength, I think, is one of the more underrated things, especially when you account for his size and the hands. I mean, my gracious, some of the plays that he was able to create in 2025 when he really broke out. I mean, obviously, Biletnikoff winner, best wide receiver in college football in terms of what the award means. He had made play after play, and truly, when you go look at USC's season, every single time they needed him, outside of towards the very end, I think UCLA, he didn't even play in the first half. Every single time USC needed a big play, they weren't going to Jacoby Lane, as well another NFL draft prospect, but they were going to Mekhi Lemon, a shorter wide receiver who just continuously made plays, got open, and there's so many little things as you keep watching his tape. You find yourself falling more and more in love with what he could be at the next level, especially where the NFL is really going towards that projection of these twitchy athletes, not to mention what he's able to do with the ball in his hands. If he gets into a system that is truly predicated on how can we get the ball into Mekhi's hands, I think they're going to win a lot of football games because they're going to be putting up so many damn points. Now, I completely understand the other names that we're going to be talking about to be at that wide receiver 1 spot, because some of the concerns is that size. Can he be able to play on the outside? Can he be able to create separation against some of these lengthier corners? I think of Gonzo. I think of, Devon Witherspoon, some of the top players, Stingley being another one. Can he create that separation? I think if he goes into a system where it's more predicated on maybe we have to design some things up and really his play strength is so far above like other players for his size. There's another player on this list that is kind of at the same frame that very much could be challenged with some of the more physical players. I think a lot of people are trying to fit him into that mold, and I think he actually breaks that mold. So I do have Mekhi Lemon at the number one spot. Number two, the second best wide receiver in this class is Jordan Tyson, regardless of the injuries. Now, the injuries are a major concern. In 2022, he had a torn ACL, MCL, and PCL. In 2024, he had a collarbone injury. And in 2025, it was hamstring. He's been banged up for the majority of his collegiate career, but when healthy, and that's obviously a huge asterisk when you're talking about football, whenever someone starts the conversation, if healthy, it's always a major red flag, especially for the NFL draft. But this is a player that could instantly elevate any given offense. If you plug and play him on that Titans offense with Cam Ward, I think he could be a superstar when healthy. There's all the little things that you're looking for in a wide receiver, especially at his size, that provide the traditional path of what you're looking for in an X wide receiver, someone that can play on the outside, the ability to play at the catch point, the ability to separate. There's all these little things that Jordan Tyson does at a very high level. It's just been unfortunate because he hasn't been consistently on the football field. Now, that could be for a multitude of reasons. A lot of people will point to the fact that maybe he's just injury prone. I land in the camp that maybe he just needs to get a completely different training regimen, and maybe he needs to get some NFL money, and maybe he needs to be in a system that's going to best set him up for success. And frankly, it could just be that he's unlucky. And when Jordan Tyson has been on the football field, he's been productive. The flaws in his game are not, I think, Achilles' heels in terms of prospects. And I think he's an instant starter. I think he's a guy that's instantly going to elevate an offense. And whatever team is able to pick him up, whether he's in the top 5, top 10, I do project him to more than likely fall. But I'm standing my ground. When healthy, he's the second best wide receiver and arguably the best wide receiver in this entire class. It's hot take time. Unfortunately, I'm staring at this. I got to stand my ground. The third best wide receiver in this upcoming NFL class is Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M. Now, I understand. You see the A&M pennant behind me. You see the A&M hat on top. I get it. A lot of people have their list in whatever order between Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, and Jordan Tyson. And frankly, I understand that. I am in the camp of if you are going to be someone that believes that Mekhi Lemon is the best wide receiver in this class, you clearly are feeling comfortable with the smaller frame wide receivers who may project to be a slot player, all those little boxes that we traditionally see with smaller wide receivers that may be red flags that I don't really think is much of a problem in 2026 compared to say like 2014 or 2004. The archetype and the sport of football overall has changed. I think you could apply some of those same traits into elevating Casey Concepcion. When you put on the tape of Casey, you see a couple different things. A, he was bailing out Marcel Reed more times than not. Marcel Reed made some strides as a passer, but if it wasn't for Casey just going up and making a play, there was going to be so many incompletions that were not on the board, and they turned into completions because of the heroics of Casey Concepcion. A lot of people pointed to Mario Craver early into the season. It was Casey from front to end that he was the best wide receiver on that football field. The statistical accolades, he didn't break 1,000 yards in his final season at Texas A&M, but we knew that if you could get the ball into Casey's hands, there was electricity bound to happen. A lot of people will point to his ability as a punt returner, and obviously that is something that he can really elevate into the next level and maybe be a dynamic weapon on special teams. But I really do project him to be very similar to a Zay Flowers. There is a lot of similarities in their games, not only their archetype and their build, but truly some of the inconsistencies with his hands that could be a big flaw with him. And I would understand why someone would have Carnell Tate in front of him because of the inconsistency in catching the football. But I also don't think he was getting the most catchable footballs in the world, especially this past season. And when he did have to try to make something happen, he did it more times than not. The play strength isn't as good as Mekhi Lemon. I would say if we're looking at a draft board, there's a couple steps behind Mekhi, but that's why he's number 3 on the board and not number 2. There is a difference in the two players, but I wouldn't put them in the same bucket just because they're the same archetype. I really do believe Casey, playmaker with the ball in his hands. The routes are ridiculous. The nuances that you really don't see with young wide receivers. He has been proven to do it at a very high level, and I think he is going to be an instant elevator of any given wide receiver room, and he's just going to be a playmaker, and that's one of the best things about getting a wide receiver, especially in the NFL draft. If you can get a guy that even over the course of a season can make a handful of different plays, I think that's worthy of getting him in a high round pick. I would say, though, the guy that I do believe is going to drop a little bit is going to be Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate out of Ohio State is a really solid wide receiver. I would classify him as B plus in damn near every single aspect of a wide receiver. There's questions about how he does against press, but I think if you're looking for very solid routes, Carnell Tate can do it. If you're looking for very solid hands, Carnell's going to be able to do it. The yak ability really isn't a big part of his game compared to some of the other guys on this list, but at the catch point, it's very solid. All these different things, it's just very solid, and you're getting a very solid wide receiver. I think he frames perfectly as a wide receiver too, someone that could be a very solid, reliable complement within the confines of an offense. I think he projects to be a very solid piece complementary to a guy like Zay Flowers, not to bring him back up, but if you were to place him in an offense, say like with the Chargers with Ladd McConkey, and just put Carnell Tate on the outside, he's going to consistently make plays. He's not the guy that you want to run your offense through. So like I think you could do with KC, Mackay, and hell, even Jordan Tyson. I think you can evolve your entire offense around those types of players. I don't believe you could do the same with Carnell Tate. The last guy, number 5, the 5th best wide receiver, in my opinion, is Denzel Boston, the 6'4" wide receiver out of Washington. Now, that 5 spot, I really do think can go to a multitude of different players. I think when we look at Denzel, the long speed's there. The catch point, the catch radius, 6'4" wide receiver. A lot of the archetypes that I guess, if you're playing Madden, if you're playing a video game, you're like, I want the big wide receiver. I want the guy that can go get the 50-50 balls. I want the aggressive catches. I want all these different things. Denzel can do that. You're not getting the most nuanced route runner. You're not getting a guy that can run every route on the route tree. You're not getting what we like to say, a yak demon, a yards after catch demon, someone that could take a screen pass all the way to the house. But you are getting a very solid athlete. And I think at the bones and at the core level of a guy that you can go and trust maybe on a 50-50 ball to turn it into a 70-30 ball, that's what Denzel Boston can do at a very high level. And I think he is going to be someone that may fall in the range of like a Quentin Johnston, but could play the physical at the top of the route a little bit better. Because QJ coming out of TCU struggled with that a lot. And he was also a body catcher. There's a lot of like abnormal traits about QJ, so maybe it's not the best example, but I think Denzel Boston has a really good starting place, and I do think he'd be more of a project player, and he's not as complete as the 4 guys in front of him. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I do think the top 4 is pretty solidified, and you're going to have a sizable gap between 4 and 5. And I do anticipate there more than likely to be some changes with that back end of the rankings. Nonetheless, to recap, just for the people here, and I appreciate everyone here watching today's show, we're doing some NFL draft stuff, so it may be new to some of the algorithm or to some of the people who have been following this page. We will be doing a lot of NFL draft stuff, but my top 5, let's restart for that. My top 5 for the NFL draft at the wide receiver position: Mackay Lemon out of USC at number 1. Number 2, I have Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. Number 3 is KC Concepcion from Texas A&M. Number 4 is Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, or better said, the Ohio State Buckeyes. And number 5 is Denzel Boston out of Washington. Nonetheless, we're 20 minutes. That took way longer than I anticipated. That took way longer. Oh, jeez. Like, share, sub. I got to do that every, like, in between every segment. I don't like doing it. I don't like being every other YouTuber that's like, sub. But to call a spade, guys, as someone that can look behind the curtain, as someone that can really understand the analytics, kind of have to say it, because when you don't say it, you really see a dive. And listen, I do this for the love of the game, but part of the benefit of doing it for the love of the game is seeing the increase in those numbers. Call a spade. I appreciate every single one of you guys. I love talking football with every single one of you guys, but I also want more people to talk about football with me. Is that crazy? Nonetheless, let's talk about some more ball. Here is my way too early top 15 for 2026. We're not doing top 25, mainly for the fact that I don't see a point in doing a top 25. It took me a while to even get to 15. I think a top 10 makes a lot more sense because you're not putting so many different rosters into a comparative analysis, and it just gets more convoluted the larger the ranking becomes. It's not college basketball. I don't need to do a top 50 because there's 68 teams in the tournament. At the end of the day, we're just focusing on the top 15 because it usually will have what consists of the playoff teams and then the outliers or the at-large bids or the bubble teams. So I think it's fair that we stick at the top 15. And I'm going to give a little bit of couple pointers of why they're at each spot. So for my way too early top 15, the number one team I have in the country entering 2026 as of right now, January 22nd, 2026, is the Texas Longhorns. Now, this shouldn't come to much of a surprise if you've been following this page for quite some time. I really believe the stars are beginning to align for Texas to not be a team that is just hype, but a team of substance. Because I feel like when you look at a program very similar to Ohio State in years past in 2024, one that really had their thumb and the pressure of the program was at a higher point than it traditionally would be. The pressure on Ryan Day really rose to the top to almost a boiling point where we began to question if he should be the coach. And then we saw the same thing with LSU and Penn State and Clemson this past year. Two of those three fired their coach because it truly felt like a make or break season. I've detailed time and time again, I believe Texas is in a make or break season because if we get to the end of the Arch Manning era and truly there's no college football playoff appearances, nothing close to a national championship, regardless if you want to agree with me that the standard at Texas is national championships, I promise you it is. I promise you, that's not just me trying to push an agenda. The standard at Texas, a lot of people who may not have ever seen them win a national championship. I mean, 2005 was 20 plus years ago at this point. But the standard that all the people that are funding that program know Texas as a national championship blue-blooded program. You and I may not have lived that, but that's the standard. And if we get to the end of 2026 and they're nothing close to that, the question then becomes, can Sark do it? What they've been able to do, though, and the reason why I think they've warranted and justified what I believe would be the number one spot once again in back-to-back preseasons, to be fair, if it was my rankings, I had them at number 5 last year, and that was overrating them apparently still. But Texas has so many first-round wide receivers, or not even wide receivers, first-rounders. Arch Manning, projected first rounder. Trevor Goodsby, projected first rounder. Cam Coleman, Hollywood Smothers, both could very well be first rounders. I would lean Cam Coleman more likely, but I see Hollywood Smothers as a first round talent. Then you throw in Ryan Wingo, who could develop into someone. Then you go to the defensive side of the ball. And Colin Simmons is the best defender in all of college football. You can make an argument he's the best player in college football. And now you have a change at the defensive coordinator. I feel a sense of urgency with Texas. Nonetheless, I feel like that urgency could yield better results and more tangible results. I have them at number 1. Number 2 is Notre Dame. If they can just mitigate the losses of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, which, to call a spade is a difficult thing. It is easier said than done to replace that type of production. But CJ Carr is going to be projected as one of the top Heisman candidates, one of the top Heisman odds. Like, he's going to potentially be the favorite by the end of it. I would not bet on that. I would think it's going to be Arch Manning if we get 3 months down the road. But the wide receivers look better. The offensive line looks better. And they're going to have a cakewalk of a schedule. If you've not seen their schedule, it is an absolute cakewalk. And their defense, once again, is going to be good. Notre Dame, once again, very good team. No excuses not to make the college football playoff. And if they can't do it with that roster and what they were able to add in the portal, especially late, we may have some uncomfortable conversations. We may have to have some uncomfortable conversations. At number 3, I have Oregon. Dante Moore really does carry that news. Dante Moore being a huge factor onto why Oregon would be number 3. Evan Stewart more than likely returning. A bunch of different pieces on that team. Yes, they're replacing the OCDC, but everyone's going to be replacing things. Dante Moore really carrying Oregon to be at that 3 spot. Number 4 is Indiana. I don't have Indiana as the number one team going into next season because that was this past season. That was 2025. Mendoza, Hemby, Black, Surratt, Omar Cooper, all the pieces on the defense, Pons, like all these different pieces are not going to be on this 2026 team. Now, do I believe that Indiana is going to still be a freight train and one of the best teams in the country? Yes, that's why I have them in the top four, because I believe that they can replicate that success and that their process and what they've been able to do in the portal and elevating the talent roster, all of that points to great signs. But there's a lot of changes. And I think even for Nick Saban and even for Kirby Smart, those types of adjustments and roster turnover, the best of the best struggled with it. And Kurt Signetti, I think, is one of the best of the best. But I'd be naive to think that he could be an anomaly that could just mitigate all that turnover and immediately just justifiably be the number one team in the country entering 2026. I'm not one to believe it because I'm judging what the roster could be in 2026. At number 5, I have Miami. This is mainly lifted up by the fact of Damon Wilson, the edge rusher out of Missouri, who projects to potentially be a first-round pick, has just committed with Miami. Then we have the Darian Mensah situation, so they got their quarterback figured out, plus Mark Fletcher, plus Malachi Toney. And if somehow they get Jordan Seaton, they're going to find themselves probably in the top 3 over like Oregon and potentially top 2. Miami's not going anywhere. The talent acquisition and the ability to do that isn't just going to fall off the face of the earth. And now that they have a program that has some sustained success and actual proven results, I expect them to be able to get even more players. So nonetheless, Miami is going to be at number 5 for me. Number 6 is Ohio State. They're going to have to flip that entire defense. Jeremiah Smith, though, Bo Jackson, Julian Sayin, and an offensive coordinator, and I believe defensive coordinator changes. There's once again going to be a ton of changes with Ohio State, but that core is going to keep them very high on this list. So I have them at number 6. Number 7, I have LSU. Sam Leavitt in this an incredible transfer portal class. If they're able to get seeded, they're more than likely going to enter in that top 5. And what I think the floor of this Lane Kiffin offense, maybe it takes a little bit longer to really gel, and maybe they take a loss or two early in the season, but I fully project that LSU, as the season goes on, is going to be a team that keeps playing better and better and better. And we could be looking at them, if they were to make the college football playoff, that they could be playing their best football by playoff time. And that's exactly what we would be looking for out of a top 7, top 5 team. Number 8, I have Georgia with returns of Gunnar Stockton and Kirby Smart. I just can't give the same credibility that we did in years prior, where it's like, oh, you got Kirby, you have a returning quarterback, you should be just fine. They are going to be replacing a lot within this team. Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas, they are flipping a ton with this roster. Now, luckily, you have Nate Frazier coming back and a lot of these different pieces. I just really begin to wonder, what is Kirby going to do differently? You know, not only last year, they saw a ton of improvement in their rushing attack and really felt like they took a step forward. This team felt like one of Kirby Smart's favorites, even though it didn't yield results. I just got to ask the question, as a team that continues to win SEC championships but didn't get any kind of proven results in the playoff, what can they do differently to elevate the roster? And I don't know if they've done anything right now that I can see that would warrant them being above all the teams that we've mentioned. Number 9, I have Texas Tech, to the surprise of no one. Great transfer portal class, spent a ton of money. Their schedule should go 11-1, 12-0. That's not how I do my list, but they're going to be a really good team. Brendan Sorsby, very talented quarterback, a bunch of different pieces on the defense once again. Question is, can you just replicate it? Can you continuously do this process over and over? It's to be seen. Number 10 is Alabama. We'll talk about Alabama here shortly, but I believe Keelan Russell, Austin Mack, regardless of who you choose to be the starting quarterback, one of them I think is going to be very, very good. I just don't know who that's going to be. You still have Ryan Williams. You still have a ton of great pieces on this roster, plus the number 2 recruiting class coming in. There's a ton of talent with the roster. It's the consistency and the volatility. They could be as high as the best team in the country. They could be as low as a borderline top 25 team. So I really don't know what to expect with Alabama, so I slot them at 10. Number 11 is John Mateer and the Oklahoma Sooners. I need to get some water. Pardon me, y'all. I was going to struggle through the rest of that segment. Number 11, I have the Oklahoma Sooners and John Mateer, returning quarterback. You're going to have a great defense once again. I just wonder, what can you do to save the consistency of not only Mateer, but the overall offense that is going to have a lot of different pieces on there? Can you fix the offensive line? You know what the problems are during the offseason. If you could fix them, you could be one of the best teams in the SEC. If it's same, you can find yourself on the outside looking at the college football playoff. Number 12 is Michigan, a team that is a contender to potentially reach my top 10 by just in a couple of months. I really do believe Michigan's going to be a very consistent and good team. Their schedule is just brutal. But if we're just talking about power rating teams and where I would put them, I have Michigan 12, projected to be higher. Number 3 is Texas A&M, returning quarterback in Marcel Reed, top 3 portal class, Mike Elko, a ton of things to like, but they are replacing one of the most seasoned offensive lines in the entire country in 2025 to having a ton of new faces. That's a big risk. You're going to have to replace Cassius Howell. You're going to have to replace Casey Concepcion, Le'Veon Moss, a ton of faces that you had become accustomed to with Texas A&M, a lot more pressure on Marcel Reed. So they're going to go as far as Marcel Reed will take them, but I can't put them higher than 13. Number 14 is USC. You have to replace the production of Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon, but you have Jaden Mayalva, the returning quarterback. You have another year with Lincoln Riley and crew. And I'm very interested. Gary Patterson, former head coach at TCU, analyst at Texas, defensive coordinator now at USC. Very interested what he could pull off in his first year. And number 15, one of the most improved teams in the entire country. If you knew about the Stadium Pulse, you know for a fact that I had been pushing Houston for a very long time. If you know me, just on my pages, I've been pushing Houston agendas for a very long time. Connor Wigman FC is right here, and we've been right on Houston. I expect them to be even better next year. They got Mekhi Hughes, that running back that went from Tulane to Oregon, didn't play too much at Oregon, went back to play with his old coach in Houston. Then you have Connor Wigman and that great defense. Very much believe Houston could be a sneaky playoff team. Might be in the future playoff best bets on this program. A couple other notes on the top 15. Oklahoma State was a candidate here. I just think I'd be a little bit too much on the hype train with Drew Messamaker and crew, but I do think they'll be a top 25 team. Miami and Indiana are not going to be going anywhere. I think that they both could rise up in the rankings. I think Indiana may drop, if anything, but Miami may slide themselves into number 2. And then I think Houston could be a Big 12 title contender and a playoff contender, as we've mentioned before. But just to recap for everyone, let's go through the top 15 real quick. We got a couple people here. If you are fresh and haven't seen this face before, welcome to the Stadium Pulse. My way too early top 15. Texas at number 1, Notre Dame at number 2, Oregon at number 3, Indiana at number 4, Miami at number 5, Ohio State, or the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 6. Number 7 is the LSU Tigers, Georgia Bulldogs at number 8, Texas Tech Red Raiders at 9. Number 10 is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Number 11 is the Oklahoma Sooners. Number 12 is the Michigan Wolverines. Number 13 is the Texas A&M Aggies. Number 14 is the USC Trojans. Number 15 is the Houston Cougars. Let me know what you think of this top 15, and I'll see you guys next time. I don't know why I did an outro. I'm so used to doing an outro for my videos. There's no point. I'm still live with you guys, and we still have one more topic to talk about. Is it time to panic about Alabama? Is it time? Can we have that conversation? Is it time to panic about Alabama? For a multitude of different reasons. There's the immediate concern. The immediate concern are the people that are holding Kalen DeBoer's life in their hands at Alabama, are they ones that are comparing him to Nick Saban with their crimson-colored glasses, the ones that have been so accustomed to national championships, the dynasty of Alabama, the Crimson Wall, all these different things? Are those people comparing Kalen DeBoer to Nick Saban? Because if they are, 2026 is a make-or-break season, and I don't know if they've done enough in the portal to really justify the fact that they are going to be significantly better in 2026. Now, the areas that they can get better, even though they're replacing their quarterback, wide receivers, running backs, offensive linemen, defensive line, all these different pieces on the team are getting replaced. If they could be consistent, that would make a wealth of benefits for them. I mean, truly, the only thing that has been consistent about Alabama football during the Kalen DeBoer era has been their inconsistency. You could rely on the volatility. You could never predict it. Truthfully, a lot of people thought if they were just triple touchdown favorites that they were going to have a bad game. And if they were dogs, they were going to have a good game. And even then, it didn't really make sense. I mean, just look at 2025. You beat Florida, or you lose to Florida State in a game that you should not have lost. You got smacked around in the second round of the playoffs where it didn't look competitive. Same could be said for the SEC championship. But in the same breath, you had the moment of going into Athens and beating Kirby Smart and that Georgia team. You got to the SEC championship. You were able to win a college football playoff game on the road against Oklahoma in what was a very impressive game overall. The ups and downs of Alabama football has to calm down. It feels like the emotions are just way too high. And I think of this time and time again. When they played Georgia in Bryant-Denny the first time, I remember the commentators, and I think it was Kirk and the crew, were pointing out that, like, Alabama in pregame warm-ups, you know, when you think of Nick Saban's Alabamas, you thought of the business trip. When they stepped into that away arena, or when they were facing off against a top opponent and all the hype and noise, College game days probably there, it felt like it was consistent. Kind of similar to what we see with Indiana, where no matter what is going on the outside, the emotions never flared up. It was always consistent, even, cool. No change in emotion. Yeah, you had intensity, but it never felt like you were really letting the moment get to you. You didn't really let the moment drive the conversation or your effort. It really feels like with Kalen DeBoer and this team, the emotions were always flaring, and that's where that inconsistency gets rooted in. So I think at its core in 2026, you want more consistency, but that's not why I'm concerned. I'm concerned because you didn't have the greatest transfer portal class. I don't think you have been able to elevate the talent roster to get to the same level. But at its core, for the long term, Alabama is not a huge threat in NIL. They're not. If you have been following Nick Saban for a long time, especially towards the end of his career, he complained time and time again with administration and state legislators to really open up the checkbooks for Alabama. And if you don't want to take my word for it and you don't want to believe me, AJ McCarron, quarterback, former Alabama Crimson Tide, one of the greatest Alabama quarterbacks in their school's history, even detailed it himself on a podcast saying their budget's sub $20 million. We're hearing 40 million, 60 million from like Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Oregon, all these different spots. And your budget's sub 20 million. You're not going to be the package that is going to be the most enticing in terms of NIL funding. The same thing could be said with Cam Coleman. Hollywood Smothers got ripped away from you from one of those big powerhouses. This happens. This is what is going to happen. That you are not going to be the team that's going to dominate on the financial side. Now, do you want every single player that just wants the biggest bag? But sure, it does help. Because the other part of what AJ McCarron said, where he said, going to Alabama wasn't ever about making the most money. It was about development. It was about winning. It was about coaching. It was about championships. Problem being, a lot of that merit was built up with the guy that's on College game day. It's not with the guy that's currently there. And Kalen DeBoer, you know, it would probably help him a lot more if he was more of a weapon in the NIL space and could throw out some more money to really overpay potentially for some of these guys. He can't do that. Alabama is not a force in the NIL space. And I worry it may limit them in the long term. And I begin to worry maybe on the short term, he's going to get compared to Nick Saban a little bit too much. And the standard's going to be too high. And then we look at 2026 and the roster maybe isn't the one that, or the portal isn't where it needs to be. It's not all doom and gloom, to be fair, in roster management. Number 2, high school recruiting class coming in. But in 2026, those true freshmen is not what's going to save your job. It's what may help you in the long term. It's always the building blocks, but you got to go win now. And it's unfortunate for a guy that's going to be I guess he went to an SEC championship last year, won a playoff game this year. The standards are going to be so high. It's following up Tom Brady, man. It's the world we live in. It's easier said than done to just separate the two and really have separate expectations. When you think Nick Saban-led programs, you have an expectation. But when you put them back to back and they're right next to each other, not everyone could be the Green Bay Packers and just swap out the most important position and everything's fine. That's just not the world we live in. There could be some struggle here. And I really begin to question if Alabama doesn't make, changes at their core to adapt to what college football is now, which is easier said than done. Could this Alabama program be one that fades as we get further away from the Nick Saban era? Not to say they'll ever get back to that level of dominance, but even the national title conversation, as we get further and further away from Nick Saban, will the power of that script A that everyone talks about, that truthfully has like a Dallas Cowboys effect on college football. You're always going to get the benefit of the doubt. People do with them against Indiana. It's like Indiana isn't going to beat them. It's the Alabama. It's the Crimson Tide. It's that script A. And guess what? Sometimes it doesn't matter because football still has to be played. Not the logos, not the history. Those aren't what's being played on the football field. If you're not going to be a competitor in terms of funding and you're being held to such a high standard, like Kalen DeBoer is a very solid coach. Do not get it twisted. I think he's a great coach. I think he's in a very, very difficult position, and that this Alabama job might not have been as enticing as we originally thought. Nonetheless, we're 40 minutes into the show. I want to say thank you to anybody who gave this show a chance. Listen, I'm just a guy in a room with a microphone. This is powered by Crutchman Media. You can see it right there. I could point to the one up there, but Crutchman Media right there. They power this entire show. They do such fantastic work. I promise you, the people that work behind the scenes here do such fantastic work. And I appreciate every single one of them. With that being said, I appreciate every single one of you guys for watching today's show. Stick around. I'll see you guys tentatively Sunday because of the winter storm. I will try to get a show out if I have power. Call a spade a spade. If I have power, anticipate a Sunday show. If not, Tuesday, 5:30. I will see you guys there. With that in mind, I got to get out of here. I got to start editing some stuff. I will see you guys next time.